Alrighty, let's review. Let us review how to name ionic and covalent compounds. All right, ionic. Ionic compounds, again, are between a positive and a negative I don't know why I wrote it out instead of doing the symbol. A positive and a negatively charged elements. Okay. Majority of the time, 99%, are between a metal and a non-metal. All right. So we have an element of, let's say, sodium and chlorine. Sodium and chlorine are combining, okay? From our last video, we know that there's one of each, okay? A sodium and a chlorine. Now, the rules for naming are: one, metals do not change their name. Okay, the metals don't change their name at all. It's always going to be, in this case, sodium is always going to be sodium. Okay. Number two, the non-metal will change its ending English was never my strong suit. Its ending to be "-ide". Okay, so lastly, rule 3, if you have a transition metal, you must put the Roman numeral saying what charge it has. Okay, in our case, we do not have a transition metal. So our name here, the metals, does not change. So it's just sodium. Okay, so we have sodium, and then rule number 2, the non-metal will change its ending to be "-ide". Okay, I-E-D, or I-D-E. Ooh, I'm dyslexic too. The non-metal will change its ending to be I-D-E. Now, it's hard to tell on a lot of elements where that IDE will go, okay? If it ends in something like "-ine", like chlorine, however you want to pronounce it, chlorine, fluorine, bromine, okay? That is going to change to "-ide", okay? You're going to get rid of the "-ine", make it an "-ide", okay? Things like oxygen, those are hard to tell, but it's just going to remove and be called oxide. You guys have heard of oxides before. I'm sure that's not an unfamiliar term or word to you. So it just sounds right. Nitrogen, that's another hard one. Okay, that ogen is going to leave and it's going to be nitride. Okay, you guys have most likely heard of nitrides before as well. Nitrides are things that are important to agriculture and growing any sort of thing in the soil. So nitrides are probably sound familiar as well. Okay, so if it's not ending in INE, you have most likely heard of it before, and so you just do your best to make sure it sounds right. Okay, so there's ionic stuff. We'll do one more example. Let's do, can I move this? Yes, let's move that. And get rid of that. Let's do francium plus nitrogen. I don't think those things will actually combine. One, because francium is synthetic and only lasts for like 5 milliseconds, something like that. But also, nitrogen doesn't tend to make these type of compounds, but it's still good practice. So, francium, it is in the first group, so it is going to form francium plus 1, and nitrogen is in the, I believe, 15th group, and so it is going to make N minus 3. Okay, so I'm going to need 3 of my franciums, so Fr3N, and the name, the metal doesn't change. Francium is the metal, and so the name is going to be, make sure I have the right color here. The name is going to start out with francium, and then nitrogen is the next one, and we just said the ogen is going to be dropped, and it's going to be nitride. So francium nitride, that is the name of this ionic compound. All right, one more. Let's do one more. Let's do one with a transition metal in it. Okay, now on like a quiz or anything like that, you should never be given just iron and a nonmetal like chlorine. Okay, if you're just given this as a question, just this right here, nothing more, then you won't be able to tell the correct answer. There's going to be multiple correct answers here. So I would be giving you something like this. Okay, it's FeCl3. Now that is iron chloride. Okay, we have our metal. The name doesn't change, it's iron, and chlorine is going to go to chloride. Okay, but this is a transition metal. Now, I can tell iron's charge, I can tell whatever Roman numeral I need to put in by the number of our elements here. Okay, so if I have iron here, and it takes 3 chlorines, that means that there are 3 negative charges, which means iron has to be a +3 charge. Okay, iron has to be a +3 charge. So I'm going to put the Roman numeral 3 there, and our name is going to be iron 3 chloride. Okay, if you have questions, email me, let me know. So that is ionic compounds. The rules are a little bit different for covalent compounds. Okay, move this up. Covalent compounds, we remember, are between nonmetals and are sharing electrons. Okay, it's important denotion there. I don't know if that's the right word, but they are sharing electrons here. Now, the rules for naming. Okay, the first rule is the first element does not change the ending of its name. Okay, the first element does not change the ending of its name. Okay, the beginning may change, but the ending does not. Okay, number 2 is the second element will change its ending to "-ide". Okay, just like in an ionic compound. The second element will always change the end of itself to "-ide". Okay? The third rule, well, here, let's say it this way. There has to be a prefix, meaning something at the beginning of each element's name, a prefix to determine how many of each element, abbreviate that, there are. Okay, this is except when there is only one of the first element. Okay, you do that for all the elements except the first element when there is only one of them. So let's do an example. Let's do CH4. Okay, this has a different name. It's called methane, but it's correct terminology for its name. We can go through. The first element does not change its name. That's rule number 1. So it is going to be carbon. Okay, so you have carbon. The second element will change its ending to "-ide". That means hydrogen will be hydride. Okay. Now the third rule, we have to put a prefix in front of both of these to determine how many of each there are. Okay, except for when there's only one of the first element here. When there's only one, you don't have to put a prefix there. So there is only one carbon, so we are not going to start with monocarbon. That is not correct. We just leave it as carbon. And the second one, there's 4, so that is going to be tetrahydride, carbon tetrahydride. Okay? Now, we can do something like this, where it's C2H6, there we go. This is ethane, but its correct name would be dicarbon hexahydride. Okay, since there is more than one, we have to put that prefix here. As a reminder of what the prefixes are, we have 1 is mono, 2 is di, 3 is tri, 4 is tetra, 5 is, I don't know why I wanted to write is, 5 is penta, 6 is hexa, 7 is hepta, 8 is octo, 9 is nona, and 10 is deca. Okay, anything above 4 you won't really use too much, but they're there for you when you need it. Okay, so those are some reminders of how to name compounds, both ionic and covalent. We are going to have a quiz next week involving what valence electrons are, how to make these compounds, and then how to name them. Okay, so all of chapter 16, make sure you guys are ready for that. Hopefully you guys are staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you guys later.